You're listening to the Happy Doc Student Podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing clarity to the often mysterious doctoral process. Do you feel like you're losing your mind? Let me and my guests show you how to put more joy in your journey and graduate with your sanity, health, and relationships intact. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Frederick, and in this episode, I welcome back Dai Manuel. Dai has a passion for helping others navigate change to create sustainable, healthier, and happier lives. He is the author of Dai Manuel's Whole Life Fitness Manifesto, 30 minutes a day for a healthier body, mind, and spirit. And today we are going to be talking about how to create a functionally fit lifestyle, emphasis on the fun, in 30 minutes a day, regardless of your age or ability. Dai, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Heather. It's great to see you again. This is so awesome to be back a second time, but also because I know that you've had an opportunity to sort of jump into the book, but more importantly, also apply some of those ideas and strategies. And I'm just excited to hear your thoughts on the whole thing and what the experience was like for you, and hopefully maybe inspire somebody else to take that initial step too.
Well, I'm very grateful that you were so kind as to send me a copy of the book, and I did devour it. And I think the listeners will love that this is a workbook type book, right? So you get the information, but it also helps you plan, how am I going to create something that's fun, realistic, doable, and keep track of it? So there's areas in there for reflection. So it's a nice combination of information and journaling, which I think is attractive to my audience. And the reason I wanted to have you back now is I want to publish this episode in December. Tends to be a hectic, crazy time for people, but also a time where we take stock and we say, what was working for me in 2023? What do I want to make sure I bring in to 2024? And what wasn't? What do I want to leave behind? What changes might I want to make? And you know, I am huge on investing in yourself, body, mind, and spirit.
Yes.
Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't function optimally in any area, much less a high-level doctoral program. I was hoping you would start by giving us a little bit of background about why the book.
Okay. The simple answer is I just saw a need for it. And what I mean by that is many years ago, you know, I in our last conversation, I shared some of that journey I've found myself on and my family specifically. And, you know, 15 years ago, I went through a big change. You know, I recognized that professionally, I had a lot of great things happening, but I also had a lot of habits that were holding me back. But most of those habits were being fostered in my personal life, you know, like my drinking. And that would often lead to other things that would also in turn hold me back. And what I mean by that is not following through on commitments, specifically commitments I would make for myself, you know, because, you know, life gets busy. It does. It becomes more and more full, and it's harder to manage things. And the first things that we often put aside to create more space to do a lot of these opportunities, or at least so we can say yes to them, is our own personal stuff. You know, our personal time, our personal energy to putting things back into our lives that helps build our resiliency to life, especially the challenges that we navigate in life. Because, hey, it's not a matter of if, it's always a matter of when, right? So my wife and I, when I went through that transition, because all of a sudden I removed alcohol from my life, I had all this extra time, energy, and resources. And my wife and I, we realized that we'd always gotten the greatest amount of fulfillment together when we would facilitate groups and engage groups of people and really try to empower them to be able to say, you know what, this is my life and I have the ability to make changes when I want to, especially when it comes to health. And I know a lot of us, sometimes we lose that belief, right? We just sort of, I equate it to becoming disenchanted, you know, with just health in general, because once those health markers start to go the wrong direction, it is a slippery slope. You know, motivation usually follows it. and so finding that motivation to keep moving forward, keep doing the things that keeps us in a great place, a great headspace, having fun, feeling engaged, feeling connected with our lives and the things around us that make up our lives. Well, that's where that quality of life starts to really depreciate. And also just that sense of fulfillment, joy, and happiness. And so for us, we started volunteering. And when I say volunteering, we just hosted free fitness sessions for people, sometimes at the park, sometimes at one of my retail stores that I used to own, sometimes in the parking lot, okay, of my said retail store, depending on the size of the group that would show up. And we were just hosting these free Sunday fun day throwdowns, we called it. And it was really just a community of people who come together to work out on Sundays. We ran that community for 5 years, saw thousands of people over those 5 years come to the community. We'd often see upwards of 100 people every Sunday morning come out to do a workout together. And I got to test a lot of ideas, right? Because I'd often hear from people, oh, I used to be healthy. I used to be fit. I used to be a collegiate swimmer. I'm now 60 pounds overweight, and I really don't feel good about myself. I remember how good I felt when I was competing, when I was engaged with my body and my health. I'm like, well, why don't you get back engaged, And I would hear these excuses come up, and really excuses, if you say them 2 times or more, it's just a bad habit in disguise, okay? So it's a matter of trying to make people aware of the habit, but also empower them to change the habit. And we know that neuroscience tells us that this is possible, but there's no definitive amount of time to make it happen, but it shouldn't matter about the time piece. You just got to commit to a process, take a step every day, prioritize some time for yourself, and good things are going to happen. But this is what happened. People started saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it, but I have a general idea of why I want to do it, but I just don't know where to begin. And as soon as you start Googling this kind of stuff, man, there's 1,000,001 answers. And there's also a lot of misinformation. So that was why the book came to be. It was really just a resource that I want to be able to put in people's hands and say, here you go. This is going to get you started. This isn't the end all be all of solutions, though, and I'm fully transparent on that. But it's a great place to begin that journey of getting reconnected with your own life and that peace that builds resiliency, and that's the why behind the book.
I love that because Dai, my big take home message after reading your book and doing it, because I did it too, was this feeling of simple empowerment. It's overwhelming to, like you say, Google, how do I start? And I've had so many people say, where should I get started? And it's overwhelming when someone asks you that too, because it can be such a personal question, but what you've created is something with a lot of flexibility. So I think all my listeners know I have a morning routine. I'm very, very committed. I'm married to my self-care practice. But what I found so interesting when I went through your program was that it challenged me to really ask myself, well, why am I doing that and for that amount of time? And how do I feel if I shake it up a little? And I was reminded about this concept of things that are novel. The brain and the body love diversity, right? And so I really found like it was sparking more joy in my morning because I was doing different things. So I kept my yoga practice because that is just part of me.
Beautiful.
But I had realized I was starting to really engage in a lot of guided meditations. The last year and a half has been pretty crazy for me. And I really appreciated someone kind of talking me through the journey. But you brought me back to my original roots, which was transcendental meditation. So really just being still. But you only say, hey, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. And I'm big on saying to people, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, really, it does make a difference. And it does. It's just 5 minutes.
And for those out there that are really analytical, which is a good chunk of us, right? We like the data, we like the research, we like the science, justification or backing for why this is a good thing to adopt. And I always like to bring it back when you look at meditation, even just that as you said, Heather, 1 minute, right? It's enough. In 1 minute of intentional, controlled breathing, we can see an improvement in so many markers, but the one that stands out the most is our heart rate variability. And this is a direct correlation to our nervous system. And when we're in a fight or flight or flee situation, cortisol's high, adrenaline's up there, we're feeling overwhelmed. And the problem is a lot of us go around like that 24/7, right? We never come down from it. And we know for sure HRV will be chronically low in individuals like that. But that controlled breathing is a quick way to tie into that nervous system and offset that sense of overwhelm just enough that the HRV will improve by a few basis points. And that is life-changing. And you can imagine that in only 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, like what? Really? I always encourage people, look at the data. You got an activity tracker, you got an app to track that stuff, it will happen. And there's other markers that improve as well. Things like resting heart rate, and so it's an incredible activity to do. But I do recognize that it's also a hard activity to start. For myself, I'm a guy that likes to move. Okay. It's just like, I'd like to move. So I was always really challenged with the idea of sitting still for any duration of time, without fidgeting and with trying to clear my mind to really focus on the breath. And that's why I incorporate mine after intentional movement. Like after I work out, after I exercise, even if it's just 15 minutes, I find it so much easier to make myself still and focus on slowing the breath. It's also easier to keep my mind clear because I'm like, heart rate's elevated from the workout. And now I just want to bring it back down, And so I found that combination, and I'd love to hear your experience with that, Heather. If it made a difference for you at all, just sort of positioning that meditation component after the exertion component. And I'm just wondering if you experienced anything interesting from that.
It did, because normally I meditate and then work out. And so I'm like, well, hey, Dai's giving me something new and different. I know that from the research, new and different tends to lead to good outcomes. So let's try this. And so what you have here is a recipe. So the listeners may not understand. I've read the book. You live this book. So you start out with, you wake up and you drink 2 glasses of water, which makes sense because we've been fasting or dehydrated. Now, I keep water by my bed. And maybe this is too much information, but first I tongue scrape. I'm really big.
Good. And that's amazing. Yeah.
And then I drink my water. But what I didn't realize was I was not drinking 2 cups. And even though I'm super into hydration, and I will say this is one of the easiest things you can do to raise your vibration, be happier, make fewer mistakes in life, be more pleasant, just be hydrated. Let's start there. And so I feel like I'm pretty good throughout the day. But I realized I wasn't drinking 2 glasses, which is what you recommend. And right off the bat, I noticed a difference.
Beautiful.
Right off the bat.
Beautiful.
Then you recommend the working out, 15 minutes. Okay, so I was doing my yoga, but then I was also adding in, and what I love about the book is you give great pictures. This is exactly how you can do it. Hey guys, here's modifications. For example, used to love my burpees. Not really, like I broke up with burpees like 10 years ago. Of us. But you give a modification for that, which I'm like, well, now this is interesting. And so not only are you showing exactly how to move the body, but you're giving a formula. On day 1, do this. I loved not thinking. I love just waking up and I'm like, ooh, I wonder what I'm doing today. You don't have to think about it. And then the stillness. And I thought my timer would go off and I'm like, already?
Yeah.
Already? That was 5 minutes. So yes, I did notice a difference, that it was very intentional the way you put those together.
Oh, thank you. And well, that now that people are probably doing the math. Okay, well, that's 15 minutes and then 5 minutes. Well, where's the other 10 minutes come in? Because the 2% solution is really this idea about prioritizing a non-negotiable block of 30 minutes every day for your self-care. It's very, very intentional, but it's non-negotiable. It's like, I always tell people, if you were paid $1 million every time you showed up for yourself for 30 minutes daily, would you show up to that appointment? Yeah, of course you would. Well, you got to keep that prioritized because it is, may not be a monetary value instantly, but believe me, when it comes to longevity, vitality, and quality of life, it's priceless. That little 30 minutes a day. And so 15 minutes of movement with purpose, 5 minutes of mindful meditation. And now you are primed and ready to receive. The brain is ready. And this is where you inject positive inputs into that beautiful muscle between our ears. And I know there's scientists out there and doctors thinking it's not a muscle, and I get it. I once did a keynote and I had a bunch of neuroscientists out in the audience. And one lady in particular came up, I just wanted to correct you. Like the brain it's an organ. It's not a muscle. And I'm like, I know that it was alliteration and metaphor. Okay. but anyways, this muscle between our ears often is taking inputs from a lot of external sources that might not necessarily be positive. And that has an effect on us long term. It really does. Not only in the instant, but on the compounded time, the more that we have these inputs coming at us. I mean, we can't help but turn on the media today, and there's a lot of things to be afraid of. There's a lot of things to be concerned about happening globally. And I'm not saying ignore the issues of what's happening around the world, but if that's the only inputs you're putting into yourself, is it any wonder why our thought patterns might start to veer to more the negative? And our perspective on our experience with the world, but also the world just in general around us. So I want people to offset that negative by injecting something positive. Like listening to Heather's podcast is a prime example, right? Like you set it up so you got a good 10 minutes there, no matter what, that you're going to inject that. Maybe you have an Audible book, a TED Talk. Maybe you have a conversation with a mentor or a coach, a parent. I'm not so prescriptive to say, you got to do this. I give examples, but I'm not going to prescribe and force people, to consume types of content that truthfully they're not interested in. So you got to find something that you resonate with, and then just prioritize that time, because it's incredible what happens. The inputs affect the outputs. All right. Absolutely. This is the scientific method 101, right? It's like measure the inputs, gauge the outputs. Okay, where are things going wrong here, right? Well, if we change the inputs, oh my goodness, we got different outputs. Wow, look at that. And so the same idea, what do you put into your mind is going to affect how you're showing up, the things that you're doing, but most importantly, how you look at yourself every time you look in the mirror. And if you don't look in that mirror and say, high five, I'm awesome, and I love this person looking at me, there's room for improvement, okay? So that's sort of the gist of the 2% solution.
As you were talking, I was thinking one of my mentors was fond of saying garbage in, garbage out.
Yes. Right? Great.
Now she would use that in terms of data. If you collect data and you're not doing it well and you're not inputting it well, then your results aren't going to be worth anything. But the truth is, garbage in, our minds, our bodies. Yes. You do touch on nutrition, garbage out. Now, what I found interesting was after I did my 5 minutes of stillness, what I chose to do for those 10 minutes, I really didn't know before my 5 minutes of stillness. It would kind of pop into my head. Hey, there's this book or this chapter I've been wanting to read, or there's this list I have of videos to watch later, or email newsletters to read. And it almost felt like even just the 5 minutes of being still after working out.
Yes.
Let me tap into my intuition as to what does Heather need to set her day on the right course. And then I was just in tune with that. It was awesome.
Oh, I love that. What you just described, Heather, I think is beautiful. And there is that intentionality with the way that I put it together. But I recognize everybody's experience is different, and the fact that it helped you tap into something that you already are really good at tapping into, but it created that, I guess I could call it stimulation, and that focus, or that intentional focus that, hey, this is what I feel like I need, and this is what I'm going to give myself. I think that's just such a beautiful thing, because how many of us ignore that little thing, that little voice, right? That little intuitive voice that often knows really well what we need, but sometimes we just push it aside, right? And what do you tell people, actually, by the way, to tap into more intuition? You know what I mean? To trust that maybe that gut feeling or that instinctual feeling that comes up in them, because I find that's a challenging one for people. For myself especially. I'd love to hear your answer.
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think especially people who have created careers tapping into their logical mind and rational thinking, we spend so much time ignoring gut, right? And relying on the pro-con list, the data, whereas this feeling is something that we kind of become numb to. And that's how I experience my intuition, is I feel it, I know it, I don't think it. That is why I think my yoga practice would be so difficult for me to give up, because really learning how to breathe with body movement has helped me feel my body. For so much of my life, my body was just something to carry my head around. It was like a transportation instrument.
Fair.
And I cared for it. I eat pretty, clean, and I do workouts because I want to be able to carry my head around.
Yep.
Not necessarily because I wanted to tap into what my gut was saying. And so for me, the yoga and anything that is a ventral vagal toning exercise, like breath work, humming,
Yeah.
anything that's going to help me feel with my whole body. And so sometimes it's just pausing, like those 5 minutes, right?
Yes.
Just being still and going, well, wait, what do I need right now? Because it's so busy. The world is so busy and so cluttered. How do we carve out just a little bit of space? You're advocating 2%. Is nothing really, 2% to significantly transform and improve our lives, to be still and create space so that we can know what's in our best interest.
Well said.
That was very clever. You put me on the spot.
I like it though, but I'm just curious about that because I do hear people speak to that, right? That idea of just trusting that we actually know what's best for us.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate though that sometimes we don't trust ourselves. I've lived in periods of my life where I second guess everything I did, and I think it's that lack of clarity, right, or lack of vision and purpose and meaning in our lives. It's amazing what we'll do to fill that void, to avoid or to ignore or just try to pretend like, oh, that gap's not there. No, life's great. I get up every morning and just keep doing what we do. It's challenging, right? And we need energy for that. And the things that we do every day, is it drain us or does it lift us up to want to do more? And unfortunately, I think the way it goes is it's often a drain, or at least that's how we look at it, right? And,
which is why I think most people are turning on Netflix, maybe, pouring a glass of wine and then getting up the next day feeling tired and doing it all over again until they have a significant life event. You and I both had life events where you kind of go, do I need to course correct here? And what I'm hoping, dear listener, is that you don't need to get to that point. That maybe something we're saying today is resonating with you, because really what you're offering through this, it's a book, but it's a workbook too. And again, that's what I loved about it, is a compassionate, really accessible way to create a program. So maybe you don't have one and you're thinking, I know I need one, but I don't even know where to start. Or maybe you're like me and you have one and you're like, yeah, I've got one, but maybe mine can be a little bit more fun. Maybe right? Never stop learning. Maybe there's something out there that will spark more joy with my routine. And I think your book does it's really a gift.
Well, thank you. Honestly, Heather, that means a lot. And we always envisioned it more as a gateway program. And sort of picking off the gateway drug sort of analogy here. But, there's that whole belief that these small little things can lead to bigger things. And that's always been my mindset, is if I dedicate a little bit of energy and effort to learn something new or to try something different, and I do it consistently, it's amazing. Results do happen.
Yes.
They really do. And when it develops that belief in yourself and that confidence that, hey, I can do these types of things, I have the ability to change. It is such a wonderful feeling, because once you understand that you have that ability, you can't unlearn it. Now, you can be ignorant to it. You can choose to do the other stuff that takes you away from that. But deep down, you'll always remember, I can make the change if I want to. And hopefully you just get to a place where it's like, no, I just want to live this way. And that's my encouragement to everybody, is that as much as it's a gateway to get started, don't just stop. It's set up to be done in 28-day cycles, 4 weeks. And then I encourage people, take a week off and then do another 28. Like, it's 30 minutes a day. It's not a lot of time and energy to really to make that a priority. And I do hear from people on the time thing. I get it. Lives are very full. You're a parent, you got a career, you got a spouse, you got community stuff. I get it. You're living an amazing life and it's full of a lot of great stuff. But if you pick up those little smartphones and you go to screen time section, you'll be very impressed to know how much of that time daily might be going to things that could be better allocated for you. Because if you're not seeing the results in your health, your well-being, your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, like if you're not seeing the progress in those areas and you're not feeling very connected to those areas, chances are that maybe there's just a little bit too much screen time distracting you. And if we look at statistics, this is not just an isolated issue. Okay. It's everywhere. It's a global issue now. and inactivity is on the rise. And we want to be very cognizant of this. It is a trap. It's a trap, and it feeds us very well. The dopamine trap, right? Like it's there. It's real. Oh, look, I got a ping. I got a direct message. I'm just going to check the message. Oh, it's on Instagram. Oh, I'll scroll a few minutes. Oh my gosh, I just lost half an hour. There's my 2% gone, right? Once you become aware of your screen time use, you can start to reallocate a piece of that for yourself. Because I believe everyone's got the time and energy and space to implement this solution I'm talking about, this 2% solution, no matter what. But it's the least that you deserve, okay? Everybody, I truly believe it's the least that you deserve. Because you talk to anybody in your life and you say, hey, am I worth this 30 minutes a day to prioritize myself, my health, my care? Everybody that cares about you are going to be like, heck yeah, how can I help you, right? But it's amazing how we don't do that for ourselves sometimes.
I'm so glad you brought up time, because of course, that is probably the number one reason people will give, especially for those in a doctoral program or faculty as well. Academia is, traditionally very busy.
Yeah.
But I'm right there with you. I'm on that soapbox of it's a trap. Check things out, guys. Do a deep dive, do a reflection. Is it time to reevaluate maybe the number of social media accounts you have, the time you spend on them, where they are? I know I took mine all off my phone. Is it time to turn off alerts and set some boundaries? Because 2% is a small percent to invest in your health and your well-being so that you can reach your goals, like finishing your doctoral program. If you're listening to this, there's a reason. Is it time to do a deep dive on where your time is going? Yeah. And as we walk into 2024 with this vision of how we want our life to be, maybe Dai's book is going to be a gift to yourself or someone you know or love. Great for whatever holiday you celebrate this time of the year, because you're really giving someone permission to care about themselves.
The way I always like to think about it is every person alive is worth it. And it's just unfortunate sometimes people get to a place where they don't believe that they deserve it, and that always pains me. It really does. I mean, we're quick to give up on ourselves when there's people around us that will never give up on us. Yeah. Why can't we be one of those people that never give up on ourselves, right? And I think it's just a matter of getting started, because I know this, you can speak to this really well, Heather, is the productivity that we experience in our lives when we prioritize a little bit of self-care every day is remarkable. You actually get more done with the same amount of time, and in some cases less time.
It's true. It's true. I mean, and again, I always say, you guys, be your own experiment, sample size of one, try it out and see for yourself. Experience really is the best evidence. Yeah. And I had so much fun talking with you today. I'm going to make sure in the show notes that there's all the information for people to contact you. You've got a new podcast coming out, so we'll make sure we have that down there and the link to your book.
I've had a great time reconnecting with you, and I just want to say thank you for the time and the energy, but also more importantly, the commitment to following through with what was in the book. I just really value your input, and the fact that you've had such a positive experience. Really, well, you just made my year. So thank you. I really got to say that. It's wonderful to hear that. I wish you much success with your next chapter, because I know you have a new chapter that you're leaning into as well, and hopefully I can get you on my podcast when it gets live. So I'm just throwing this down right now on the record, because and for those of you that are listening to this, if you want to listen to Heather on my podcast, maybe you should comment on hers. Go send her a message, bombard her, tell her, when are you going to be on Dai's podcast? Okay, so there you go. I'm calling it out, Heather. And
it's a deal. It's a deal.
I just love your pearls of wisdom, and it's so impactful, but also so simple and accessible. So I'm excited to reciprocate, and put you in the hot seat, and
I can't
and then
wait.
Go from there. Yeah,
keep the conversation going. And so listeners, let 2024 be the year where you have the motto, I am worth it. Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Until then, if you're looking for more ways to invite joy in your journey, check out the free resources at expandyourhappy.com. You'll find downloads like an article I wrote titled, The Doctoral Journey, 12 Things You Need to Know That They Probably Won't Tell You. You'll also find a PDF that organizes all podcasts by the 7 steps detailed in the Happy Doc Student Handbook, which you can also find on the website. Finally, if you're looking for Happy Doc student swag, I've got that too. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel, and if you want to make my day, rate and review so that together we can change the way doctoral education is delivered and experienced. Hey, one more thing. Just a quick reminder that the information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only.